Hello, David.
Hello, Marina.
It's lovely to have you here on the Marina Show. So tell me a little bit about you and your life purpose.
It's a big question.
Straight in there.
So I guess me, the person, is 46 years old, trained as an engineer, and now own and run a company called ManaVitality.com.
Trained as an engineer. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it was actually from a military background.
Wow.
As an aircraft and aeronautical engineer, which feels like another lifetime ago, to be honest.
Yeah, that's a very logical thing, isn't it? I would say.
Totally.
To have gone down. Was that like from your parents saying,
No,
go
not
down
at all.
that route?
I left home early. I left home at 16.
Okay.
And I guess I always wanted to get educated at the time, and I loved engineering.
Yeah.
So back in Australia, that was just a really good way to get trained.
Yeah.
And they paid for your training at the time. So I was just a teenager when I went in.
Amazing.
And it was a really good experience. I'm glad I got out when I did. But those engineering skills helped me later in life when I got into resonant science and resonant physics, which is a passion of mine. So,
wow.
Yeah.
So tell me, what is resonant physics?
so I guess it's understanding the science of nature.
A bit like quantum physics.
It includes quantum physics. I
Okay.
guess everything has a resonance, and
Yes.
there's a particular science that aligns with natural systems and natural processes. And that was something I was very interested in because I guess it was more real for me and less heady and more intuitive. So that just resonated with me at the time.
Amazing. So if you could simplify that, because when you speak of that, I mean, obviously everything has a resonance, right? So
Yes.
for me, the thought that I think is like a resonant frequency and an energy, and so I think of that. But if you could explain that a little bit more, what does that mean?
Yeah, so exactly what you said. Everything is
Yeah.
energy
Yeah.
and everything is frequency,
Yeah.
and it's coming out of a field
Yes.
and then returning back to that field.
Yeah.
So I guess resonant technology is really the understanding of how that's working and how we're in harmony with that field and the geometry of that, how the light is processing, and just a lot of those, higher processes that we don't necessarily have access to in like mainstream science or mainstream physics yet.
Okay. Amazing. But that's something you've looked in depth and studied in depth, like since how many years?
Over a decade now.
Wow.
Yeah, it just came to me actually in 2011. I was working in the medical industry and just wanted to stop. I wasn't happy inside. So,
Working in the medical profession.
yes,
What was you doing?
medical device sales.
Right. So
Sales
like,
and marketing.
yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was an awesome job, don't get me wrong. I
Yeah.
was installing digital operating theatres. So I
Yeah.
was selling them, installing them, and then teaching the surgeons and nursing staff how to use all the equipment.
Yep.
However, and it was just, I guess I always had this longing to understand who we are and where we're going.
Yep.
And that's when I just stopped everything, went out into nature, had some pretty extreme experiences, but then came across this resonant science as well, which was actually introduced to me by an incredible theoretical physicist called Nassim Haramein.
Yeah.
And what he was saying to me was really like a description of nature, a description of who we are, a description of what God is. And for me at the time, that was fascinating
Yeah.
and became a deep passion. So it was very easy for me to just jump headfirst into that and spend hundreds, if not thousands of hours researching.
So I'm really like intrigued. Like what happened? So obviously, like you've gone in this, you're doing a job you hate. Well, not hate. That's a bit extreme. But let's just picture it. And then you go out into nature. So was this like a natural experience you had in nature that kind of transformed you and brought you more closer to the oneness? Because I'm getting that kind of image of you having this connection element, which has brought you into your heart, right? Mm-hmm. And then you've got this amazing person that's introduced you to this resonant physics. Mm-hmm. So what was that? What was that experience, and how did that happen?
Yeah, I think nature's our greatest teacher.
Yeah.
And so if we quiet everything down
Yeah.
and spend time in nature and just watching nature and observing nature,
Yeah.
I think we come into a natural harmony
Yeah.
with ourselves and the earth and the sun, so the elements, and then the pulse of, I guess, the solar system and the galaxy and the universe.
Yeah.
So, yeah, for me, it removed a lot of the fear and the separation, which I guess is our natural conditioning growing up, because our senses give us that perception that everything's outside of us and everything's separate.
Yeah.
So nature brings us back to that state of realizing that there is this harmony, there's this connectedness between all the different systems.
Yeah.
And then as we, I guess, get into other practices like meditation or vipassanas or whatever they might be, we can actually dive further and deeper into that connection and realize that actually everything's connected.
It so is. It's very beautiful. So was that your experience then? Was you like, okay, I'm going to go out into nature, I'm going to start a practice? Like, tell me the vision. I want to know the story of like that process, because it's massive. There's so many people who will be listening to this that are scared, right? They're doing a job they hate.
Yes.
And they're in this system which tells them they have to work hard, they have to, achieve, excuse my language, but fuck everyone over.
Yes.
And then they're fucking themselves, right? So like, how did you make such a big transformation? Because I've been there, I was in a sales jobs like we've discussed. So how did you make that transition? And was it mushrooms or anything like that? Or was it all just natural? I'm just curious. You don't have to answer if you don't want to.
No, I'll answer anything. Yeah, it was all natural.
Okay.
And to be honest, it was a journey of courage. Like, there's a lot of courage to actually stop work. And I prolonged that process for longer than I should have.
Yeah.
Because of fear.
Yes.
And the fear of not being able to have the same lifestyle. You know, that check comes in every month.
Yeah.
And a month comes around pretty quickly. So it's quite comfortable to stay in those roles and receive that check. So when you say that's going to stop and I'm just going to walk out into the bush, into the desert, not knowing what's going to happen.
Yeah, because as you're saying it, I can feel like your breath like stopping. Like, even as you're saying it, like I can feel that fear and that element of that is true courage.
Yeah, and I guess I gave myself a good little prerequisite to that now that I think about it, because I had done a Vipassana, which is a 10-day silent meditation retreat.
Okay.
And then after that, I sun gazed for about 12 months. So the sun gazing had removed a lot of those egoic fear-based concepts and a lot of the separation and fear of death and those things. So I guess what I'm saying by that is it allowed me to have a deeper trust in the truth of who we are and in God, and walk knowing that I'm somewhat safe.
Yeah, because it's all illusion anyway.
Yeah.
And I love that. And I love the connection with everything allowed you to know that actually you're always going to be okay.
Yes. And then that only comes from experience as well. Like, I had some pretty extreme situations. So first I went out into the centre of Australia where there's a beautiful sacred space really called Uluru. And so I went out there for 3 months initially, and then I just followed like wherever I felt I was meant to be. And a lot of it was pretty random to me at the time, but it took me to places like the Dead Sea and Egypt and Peru and Mount Shasta here in the US, and just a lot of those places that you hear people talk about in spiritual circles. Yeah. And I didn't necessarily go there for that reason, and sometimes I only went somewhere for like a week or two, but ended up staying for 3 or 6 months. Yeah. And by being on the land for that long, I felt that real, I guess the land to me and the song lines and the ley lines have a lot to share with us. Yep. And so by sitting for that long and fasting and sun gazing, you kind of receive a lot of that information, which for me was very, very connecting and very peaceful. Wow. And felt very safe. I think it's very beautiful how you've done this, but a very pure way. There's an element of
and listening to your soul, but also like this is like a pure going within, but then also that balance of trusting yourself and trusting your intuition just to go to these places. We're not really knowing why, but just knowing that from just being.
Yeah.
Because it's powerful, isn't it? Like to feel the energy of a place.
Totally.
Which brings you something else, which you don't realise it's bringing you, but it is.
Yeah, well said. It's often in retrospect for me that I realise how powerful those experiences were.
Yes.
You know, sometimes when you're going through them, you can still be in your mind or whatever, and sometimes they're really challenging.
Yeah.
Like wandering through the desert in Israel and being down at the Dead Sea. I actually slept by the Dead Sea for 3 months.
Okay.
And that was very challenging because there's nothing there. There's no greenery. There's nothing there, I should say, that we used to. Like I didn't have access to power. I didn't have access to normal comforts.
Yeah.
I did have shelter in the end, which was amazing. But I had the elements. So
Yes.
again, the elements have been my greatest teacher. So I had the sun.
Yeah.
I had all the different expressions of water, being the Dead Sea, which is the highest resolution of water on the planet, and then hot springs, black mud pools, and then fresh water as well.
So like nature nurtured you.
Totally.
I love that because it's like a rebirth. And I think a woman can go through that when she gives birth, but there is something around, I don't know, like I get this alchemist image of a man going through this to almost, be reborn.
Yes.
I love it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's a really good point that you brought up, and it is like around that alchemical process, which we now use with the gold, but there's the inner alchemical process of purification.
Okay.
And when we purify, whether that's through fasting or sun gazing or whatever that might be, then there's a transformation that takes place, and then there's like a death then, because there's like something's going to come up, something's going to be expressed. In alchemy, we call it a calcineration process or an incineration, which is like a heating up and a death, basically. And then there's the resurrection.
I love this.
So it's that death and resurrection process of those things that are in our subconscious, or the energies coming up to be seen and dealt with, whether it's from this life or genetics or past lives.
Yep, shadow work.
Yeah. And there's no way around it. Like at some point we have to deal with those. And the beautiful thing with it, I guess, is once they come up and come out, in Vipassana they call it a sankara.
Yeah.
So it comes up, the energy comes out, it's experienced however it's experienced, and then it comes out. And it can feel like a death. It can be so intense, but we're still here.
Which is beautiful, right?
Yes.
And this is my thing. Like the Love Alchemist is like, well, I was going to call my book that, but it's kind of what I do. But the element is that you love it all.
Yes.
And when we love it all of this, we integrate because none of it's wrong.
Beautifully said, yeah.
And I just love that image of it being purified, because I've got a very strong thing around doing everything the purest way that you can. It's one of my, again, as you're saying, like when you fast and when you have less and when you don't have all this noise out there, it's when you can hear yourself, when you can feel the field, when you can feel the energy.
Yes.
So that's really beautiful.
Yeah, and from that state of peace, and the central nervous system can be in harmony with the field, and the cellular network can be in harmony with the rest of the body and the field. That's when we get access to those higher processes.
That's when healing takes place.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. It's when, and you're right. You can then listen. Oh, right, that person doesn't feel right, or that place isn't right, or is. But you can actually get that. You can get them signs more because you're not in that fear, fight, or flight state.
Yes. Yeah, it's really important, especially for the time that we're in at the moment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very, very important to get that. And I just love the pure element because there's so much noise around all different ways where people disconnect. And it's encouraging people to come back to them in the purest way. Yeah. So I love this. So this is your story of coming back to your lovely story. You're there, you're healing, and then what happens next? you're going to all these beautiful places where, you know, you can feel the energy of the layman lines. Is it layman lines? Is that right?
Ley lines,
Ley
and
lines.
song lines. Yeah,
That's it. Okay, so you're feeling that, and then what are you feeling? Like what's happened in these places before? Are you seeing like the past life things?
somewhat. Yeah, there was some visions, but a lot of it for me is intuitive, instinctive.
Feeling.
Yeah, feeling, and then after being to those locations, what you're guided to, and what comes in
Yes.
is always really interesting. So that's really what Mana is about as well. Like one of the ingredients is from the Dead Sea and everything I learnt from those minerals. Another ingredient is from the Himalayan mountains, from spending time up there and learning about these ingredients that are known as like the elixir of life or fountain of youth, which is kind of all related to the same intention, the same knowledge, the same understanding.
I love so like mana, the meaning of that is that health? Or what does it actually mean, the word?
Yeah, it's a Hebrew word
Yeah.
that means like supernatural food.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's so resonant to what we're talking about. So supernatural, and then I love your journey because it's not just some things put in a product. It's you've been there, you felt the energy, you understand about the physics behind it, and then you're combining all of this into something that you believe in from your heart, from your pure soul.
Yeah, and a lot of it's what I learned from the elements,
Yeah.
like from the sun or the minerals or the water. And so I just see myself as a steward for those elements to come through and be expressed, because we're saltwater beings. And so many of our food, so much of our food doesn't have those nutrients in it anymore because it's not in our soils from over farming them.
Yeah.
So if we don't have access to all of those micronutrients, then there's going to be part of our biology that's compromised.
I love this. The whole like salt water being thing is only something I've discovered since being here.
Really?
And like, this is not something that's been in my reality up until this week. And then I'm here with you.
Interesting.
So very interesting.
And your name means saltwater.
It's
Seawater.
yeah. And I love the sea, right?
Yeah.
It's like, for me, it resets me energetically, vibrationally. I feel at home, but I've only felt that connection probably the last, I don't know how many years, but very strongly. And then this is amazing. And like to even be having them electrolytes in my drinks, like I feel the difference, like massively, like brain wise, and fasting in the morning, like I feel so much better. So if you can explain that, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, how much water do you usually drink
No,
a day?
I'm awful.
Okay.
Absolutely. I don't know why I've been really bad and not drinking
Okay.
enough water. But then being here, because you know you should do it, right? You know, like, oh, you're meant to drink my water. But the fact of the matter is, if you get up and you eat breakfast, that eating would stop me wanting to drink. So by going, okay, I'm not doing that, and I'm going to drink, and then putting something in my water makes a massive difference. That I feel like it's good for my body.
Yeah. And most people are aware to drink, 2, 3, 4 glasses of water a day. I always recommend having like 2 or 3 when you first wake up.
Yep.
Just to rehydrate the body.
Yep.
So people are conditioned that we're water beings and we need a lot of water.
Yeah.
But what a lot of people forget is that we're saltwater beings.
This is amazing.
Yeah. So we're not actually, there's no fresh water inside of us. You think of all the water that comes out of us is salty.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to get the macro salts, being magnesium, potassium, calcium, sulfur, and then all of those micronutrients. So that's the biggest thing with mana is science recognises there's 90 nutrients that we require for our bodies to function and also to thrive. And they are 17 vitamins, 59 minerals, and 12 amino acids. So all of those are in the little sachets. From both the plant world and the ocean world. But yes, it's really important that we get those minerals because, as I said, they're just not in our food anymore. And the reason they're so important is because we're electrical systems. So they're providing all of that electrical conductivity within our biology, which is really an antenna for the field. So we're giving the fluids, because we're 99.9% water by molecular count.
So we're 99% water by molecular count. And so I'm just like processing so much just because this is all stuff that I look into and study and I love. Like I'm very similar to you. So like we're saltwater beings, which means like our connection to the sea is massive, right?
Yes.
So we almost like come from the sea. I don't know. There's an element of, I don't know. This is what I'm thinking.
Yes.
And then I know that if you're deficient in magnesium, and I know if you're deficient in all these things, it can cause depression, it can cause, and yet people then go to like antidepressants and things like that and don't even look at this type of thing, which I think is really sad. And then obviously I love kinesiology. It's been a big part of my life, where they muscle test you and you see what you're deficient in. And so, and some things I would get muscle tested and it'd be like, your body doesn't want this, right? And then the body wants this right now. And that whole muscle testing thing I just love. So there's so many things here, because it's obviously quite a lot in one thing that you put together. But I love the element of it being a frequency thing, like just to even operate, you need these basic fundamental things.
Totally. Yeah, it's like the foundation of health is the way I see it, or first principles of health. So all of those minerals and micro elements that everything else is built off of, all of the other molecular structures are built off of those base minerals.
Okay.
So if we don't have those base minerals, then again, we're compromised. There's something missing. So our body can't function correctly. And it's really getting them back into the fluids. So the three main fluids in the body being the blood, the interstitial fluid, and the intercellular fluid. We're getting those micronutrients back into them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the gut can't absorb it, right? So there's, as you said, there's different ways.
Yes.
To absorb.
Yeah, there's three main ways to get something into the bloodstream. So you can ingest it, which goes through the gut. You can inhale it, which goes through the lungs, or you can inject it.
Okay.
Yeah, and then once it gets into that bloodstream, the next layer it needs to go through is into the interstitium. So once it's in the blood, like our nutrients and oxygen, that's how the nutrients and oxygen come in through the bloodstream.
Yeah.
And then to get it into the cells,
Yeah.
it has to go through the interstitium.
What's that?
It's like the connector in the body. It's actually the largest organ in the body. Not many people talk about it.
No, I never heard. So, because obviously I've had IV drips. I've been to lots of health retreats in the last couple of years, like so many.
Okay.
So there's an element of obviously, take your supplements. You've got IV drips. You've got your blood being taken from you and oxygen being put back in the blood.
Yes.
Which is amazing. So you've got all these different things, and then you've got the element of, but it passes through this other thing called
the interstitium, or the interstitial fluid. Interstitium.
I can't say it. Interstitium.
Another word that it's more commonly referred to is the extracellular fluid.
Extracellular fluid, and that's everywhere.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So if you think of the bloodstream, that's one network. If you think of the cells, the intercellular fluid, that's a whole nother network of fluids in the body.
Okay, so they're all talking to one another.
Well, there's something between the bloodstream and the fluid inside the cells, which is the fluid outside the cells, which is the extracellular fluid, or the interstitial fluid, which makes up about 60% of the fluid in the body. And that's why some people refer to it as the largest organ in the body. So it's actually the great connector, because everything is connected through it.
And the first thing I think with this is just energy, right? So if you're being nice and kind and positive, then that is the energy that's going to be helping everything.
Yes.
That's what I think, because obviously water is affected by our emotions.
Yes.
And then that changes the frequency in our body.
Yes.
And makes us healthy. And, if you can go back to love in any way as quickly as possible, genuinely, that's going to change your biology more than anything else. And the way you view stuff. If I view this as being healthy for me and I put it in my body and it's nurturing and I'm loving that and I'm loving myself, then it is.
Yes.
More likely that's the biggest powerful thing, I think.
I agree. And that's the ultimate supplement.
Yes.
Is
your mind.
Being in gratitude.
Yeah.
Being kind. Being like just having that deep appreciation for existence.
Yeah.
and for what it takes for existence, for us to actually be here,
Yeah.
is such an incredibly deep acknowledgement of gratitude
Yes.
and like true love. That to me, what true love is actually the fact that we can exist regardless of what's we're experiencing. So I totally agree with you. I know that the greatest supplement is that mind.
Oh my God, it's so
programming
powerful.
this structure, and then with the external supplements like Mana, what we're really doing is giving the body back all of those nutrients, all of those micronutrients, which fires up that electrical system, and really it turns those fluids crystalline again.
Like alkaline, you mean?
No, crystalline.
So what's that?
So crystals.
So it makes it
A liquid crystal. So salt.
I love my crystals. I've got my crystals down my top. So
yeah.
explain.
So salt is crystallized light.
Yeah.
And not many people know that, but salt are little crystals, right?
Yeah.
And so when
it makes it so much more beautiful. Like as you say that, I'm like, oh, salt is so much more beautiful now. I'm putting crystals on my food.
yeah,
but
totally, and especially when they're natural.
Yeah.
So like the main things the body needs is oxygen, water, and then the salts. So sodium, potassium, magnesium. That's actually like in order the main things that we need. And the reason we need those salts is for the electrical system, the electrical conductivity of the cells, of the blood, of the interstitium or the extracellular fluid. But what happens when we've got all of those in our body in the correct ratios, then our body can act as that antenna and as that crystal. So the mind then is programming a crystal. So crystals are more programmable and can hold those frequencies for longer, if you like. So that positive thoughts and that gratitude has an even deeper impact.
Resonance and stays with you more.
Totally.
Love that.
Yeah. So there is two sides. We can do so much with our mind.
Yes, so we can do that.
And then also supporting the physical as well.
Supporting, so then it both comes in line.
Yes.
And crystallizes within you, so you hold that longer.
Yes. And then being in coherent spaces like nature.
Beautiful.
And things like sun gazing. So there's multiple modalities and things that we can use to support that. I totally agree with you that the first one is definitely being in a beautiful space, a true space of that recognition and gratitude for this incredible life.
So is. And then it's, as you said, if you're going to use something to facilitate that, it's knowing that it's ethical and it's the beauty's been brought in. So like even your story of the beauty being, okay, so this is my experience, I've been here and then I've got that wisdom and I brought that into this, and it's with love and it's made with love. And even that frequency, like ethically, you don't realise if you put something into your body and it's not made with love, you can feel that frequency.
Totally, yeah.
So it's staying within them values. And how have you managed to do that within what you're doing?
I guess by coming from the other side of what is traditionally known as a business. So a business is usually set up to make money.
Yeah.
Mana's set up as a project. We don't like to use the word busyness.
I like that.
And it's a not-for-profit.
Okay.
And we have a foundation within it called Sunshine Lighthouse Foundation. So it's really set up to any additional money that's made from it goes back into R&D of improving the quality and future products that are coming, plus supporting community.
Okay.
So when I say we've come from the other direction to most businesses, is we've just focused on the quality and getting the absolute best ingredients that we can within the product with no compromises.
I love that.
And sometimes
people do that, right?
That doesn't make sense from a financial perspective, but we don't mind, basically. Like we're prepared to, we want to just offer the absolute best thing that we can. And it's really in reverence to nature again, to those elements. Like it is an option to do that. It's just takes a lot more time and energy and attention to make it happen.
I love that. And I love the sense of like community, because I mean, I'd assume that as you're making it, you can help many other communities that are involved, right?
Totally.
Where it's made and who's been brought in and how you look after the people along the process. Because there's lots of other people that I've seen in this space that are just churning stuff out without thinking of all these things. And I think the more conscious you are, the more you think of these things.
Yes. And business costs at the moment are very, very expensive.
Yeah.
So people can see, you know, sales numbers or monthly revenue and think, oh, you know, that business is making a lot of money, or that project's making a lot of money. But the cost of doing business is very high. Like just with paid ads, it's like 30% of your revenue.
Yeah.
And then your product costs can be another 30% of your revenue.
Yeah.
And your staff costs can be 20%. So there's 80%'s gone before you even, invest back into R&D or have your distribution and fulfillment or your shipping and those kind of things. So, it's been an interesting environment for me getting into e-commerce and understanding how complex a lot of that environment is. But yeah, I think if you're doing it for a deeper reason and a deeper mission than just to make money or just provide another supplement, then all of that goes away.
Yeah, it's so true. So what do you think that deeper mission is?
Yeah, it's to share the good news with people, to be honest.
The good news.
The good news. It's like, what we've been sharing.
This. The good news. Yes, the good news is, I mean, I would take from what you're saying is that you can have this beautiful life with the elements, with the nutrition, with all of this. Like, it's available to you.
Yes.
And that's all you need. That's your foundation. That's everything.
That's it.
Is that right?
Totally, yeah. And the understanding again of how amazing it is for us to be here, how incredible these bodies that we get to, have as a vehicle to explore while we're here, the complexity that's taking place inside of them, and just how special and magical it is to have the experience of life. And the true nature of who we are is so profound and such a miracle. Yeah. And that's really what Mana gives myself and the rest of the Mana team the opportunity to share. So we're setting up Mana House, which will be community and education, and then we've got more products coming through, which you're aware of, the one with the gold in it. So all of them really are reflections of the truth of who we are and the opportunity to share that good news of the miracle of life, the true miracle of life.
Beautiful. Because every day you can be reborn again, and it is a miracle to be here, and it is a blessing to be here. And it's almost like reminding ourselves of that and bringing us back home.
Yes.
And getting rid of all the noise and like connecting to that frequency.
Yes.
And I love that, even as just, if it done nothing less than reminding you of that, then you've done a massive job.
Yeah, and there is so much challenge and distraction on the planet at the moment. So just to be able to slow down, to be able to have that central nervous system relaxed and balanced and settled, and then be able to remember to be grateful for the simple things, like waking up in the morning or having a glass of water or taking another breath or being able to go outside. Those really simple, it can sound pretty basic, but again, I guess that's the greatest thing I learned from studying some of the deeper theoretical physics, was how complex like a biological system or any natural system or anything actually is, just for it to be. So for us to do those very simple, mundane tasks that we take for granted, they're literally miracles happening moment after moment after moment for them to happen. So when we slow down and things become very simple or considered simple, then we can actually remember a lot of that magic that we just take for granted and overlook when we're in our mind and racing around to the next thing.
It is magic. It's all magic. Like even the energy, like we're talking about the energy field and energy frequencies. And even right now, we're creating energy by just our interaction.
Yes.
Which will affect other people in our energy field.
Yes.
But people don't even think about that. Like even your energy, you might be with someone and the energy you create with them is not the right energy, and that's okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you know that, and then you come together with people that create that energy, and then you kind of walk an example, if you like, it's scientifically proven,
Yes.
which is magnificent, and it is all beautiful.
Yes.
But we can choose that perspective. And because when you've been around illness, like my dad nearly dying when I was young, you know that health is number one. Like it's the number one pillar. If you haven't got health, then how can you create? How
Yes.
can you? And we're here to create, even if it's just a sandcastle. But it's an element of it's creating is a life force thing.
Yeah, it's beautifully said. And, for me, health is our greatest asset. As you said, if you don't have it, you're compromised. It's very hard to be inspired
Yes.
and passionate about life.
Yeah.
And that really is our opportunity. Once you've got your health, then those higher processes are accessible. And, we can...
Things come to you, right?
Things come to you.
Like all of a sudden you get an intuitive hit. I'm like, oh. And it
Totally,
might,
yeah.
but it's because, as you said, your antenna's open. Like you're vibing, you're vibrating, and the element of it being crystal, like within you, is magnificent to me because I love crystals and I can feel their energy. But I just think it's a lovely way to put it. And I never realised of the element of holding on to that energy for longer.
Totally.
Very beautiful.
So you can think of our blood as a crystal. You can think of our cells as a crystal. You can think of all of the fluids as a crystal, our brain as a crystal. And so we're able to actually, give that crystalline structure like a higher resonance, a higher frequency, depending on the information that we expose it to as well. Because everything's information, right?
Everything is information, yeah.
Yeah, so we can expose it to lighter information, which again will allow it to then tune to those frequencies.
Yeah.
And vice versa. If we're constantly exposing it to denser frequencies, then we're kind of caught in that field as well, or experiencing that field. It's not necessarily caught in it because it's not a right or wrong thing. People that want to experience those denser frequencies is just an experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's all it is. It's just something that you experience for whatever reason that you're experiencing it. It's no right or wrong, right?
That's it.
Yeah, but I love that. I love the fact that, because obviously we're drawn to crystals as well. Well, I am, but people are drawn to things, and it is because it's frequency. And so then you're talking around the gold element,
Yes.
which I found really interesting because gold is one of my things. I don't know why, but but it has been. If you look throughout time, and angels is one of my things, and they paint angels with like gold around like halos, right? So there's an element of the gold element is a connection, I believe, to the higher realms, and I always talk of getting onto the frequency of everything you touch turns to gold, and I love the analogy, and I love all of this because it's one of my things. And so I'm really intrigued about putting gold into you, right? Because metals I've been allergic to as well. So I've had NATE where they clear the allergies out of your body. I'm not allergic to gold.
No.
So it's pure.
Yes.
And this is just my chain of thought as I'm like going,
It's beautiful to hear your relationship with gold, actually.
Yeah. It's, although I don't wear much jewelry or anything like that, I'm not. But it's like, I wear my gold chain. But there's an element of gold. It's massive. Like everything you touch can turn to gold, as in it can. And you can live this magical, beautiful life by the gratitude, by all these things. That is the golden path. I've got a picture of it at home, and it's just the golden path. And it's almost like the metaphor. Everyone's on their golden path, and the journey is the people you meet along the way and what you create with them. And that's it. So I'm really intrigued.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because most people have a very deep relationship with gold, whether they know it or not.
It's so true.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean they have
because it starts, doesn't it, from when you're young? Like all these narratives, even from the Bible. Like there's so much with this whole conditioning about gold golden, you're golden, this is
Yes.
golden, the gold medal.
Yes.
So much.
Yes, and it's used through so many temples and
Yes.
religions as well.
Yeah.
It's used through
Golden light,
the
the
golden
light metaphor.
Yes, yes. And then a lot of the ancient civilizations talk about it a lot as well, like again the
do.
Egyptians or the Sumerians. And gold is actually the highest frequency metal
Okay.
and the closest representation to the sun as well, even
Yeah.
if it's even in its color.
Yes,
So
because I like, I like actual gold. Like,
yeah,
yeah, I just something about it.
yes,
Like actually being that color.
yes.
Random.
Yeah, and so yeah, it's actually so it's the highest frequency metal. It's also like the greatest superconductor. So, like our phones and all electrical circuits still have a small amount of gold in it because it's the greatest superconductor. Superconductor meaning like
I get like super connector when you say that.
yes,
I feel like the connecting elements, and also when you talk, I also get like the cross,
yes,
because isn't there something around the symbolic of the cross not necessarily being the cross? Do you know where I'm coming from? Being like the light and the almost like the intersection between the light and the earthly experience, and then that's another meaning to the cross. Have you heard about this?
yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes,
So again, like the gold cross, people sometimes think it's religious, but it's sometimes not. It's that embodiment of the human with the light energy field and that interconnection of the both.
yes. Yeah, it's beautifully said, and it's the greatest source of light. It's the highest frequency, which is also light. It's a superconductor or superconnector was what you're picking up when I was saying that. So
Yeah.
when we're able to actually ingest gold, and we've got a process where we take 24 karat gold, convert it into a nanometer size or into nanites, and what that allows it to do is pass through the blood-brain barrier and get into the amygdala of
Into
the
our
brain.
Obviously, the amygdala is where the trauma is, right?
That's it. So
Yeah.
the amygdala is what's regulating the pleasure
Yeah.
and pain responses.
Yeah.
So once the gold lodges into the amygdala and those high frequencies get into the central nervous system, then one of the first things it does is rebalance the whole body.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because obviously, the essence of the neuroscience element of coaching and, meditation is all like to reset that, right?
Yes.
But then if you can have a substance, because it takes so many days, like sometimes 90 days of like meditation. Well, that's prefrontal cortex, isn't it? They say 90
Yes.
days of meditation to reset that. And then amygdala?
Amygdala.
Where's that? But that's your fight or flight response, isn't it, when that's turned on? And I would assume quite a lot of illness comes from that always being turned on.
Totally.
Because when I think of my dad and he dying, he was constantly in that. He was very angry and had a lot of unprocessed trauma. And, he was ready to fight.
Yes.
And that was always switched on. And then that caused everything to then be affected. So that's amazing,
Yeah.
because that cortisone level being in your
Yes.
body, all in your body, creates so much illness.
Yes.
And if we could drink something that kind of resets that, how amazing would that be?
That's it. Yeah. So, it's that stress which causes the inflammation as well. If we have something that will assist with rebalancing that.
Something pure. Like, I love the purity of it.
Yes.
So how does it work? So you drink this gold. You become golden, like the Midas touch,
Yeah, well, as I said, so the blood-brain barrier is very selective with what it lets through, and it's based off several criteria, and one of those is the size. So we get the gold down to between 15, 30 nanometers, it's called.
How did you find out that would be did you have to test on, like, to find out that you needed to be that small? Did you have to test, do experiments?
Yeah, I mean, this alchemical process is actually about 4,000 years old. It's been passed down through secret societies and through antiquity, through royal families. So back then...
Because I do get the Egypt element.
Yes.
Like, as you were talking about it earlier on, I was like, oh, they must have been doing this in Egypt. Because obviously you brought the pyramids in, and that was very much like, I just felt like that, this is like ancient stuff, like wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you come across that ancient wisdom?
Yeah, it was back when I first started traveling through Egypt. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, this alchemical gold product, or mana, or mufkat as they call it, just kept coming into my journey.
Oh, wow.
Actually, back in 2015, I came over to the US to find out more about it, and was going into a lot of underground labs and meeting...
Underground labs, I love it.
Meeting, yeah, like
sounds so
plasma
cool.
labs and meeting all these crazy alchemists and physicists.
Love it.
Yeah, I bought an old F-250 truck and travelled around for 3 months with the intention of just researching it. And at the time, to be honest, I didn't find too much truth. And I guess I found a lot of truth in theory, but I couldn't actually find people that could show me a substance that I could trust.
Yep.
And it was obviously very expensive as well. I'd found a way to make it, and I went through that process. But, you know, an ounce of gold at the time was around $1,500.
Wow.
And you'd end up with a tiny little piece of white powder. So it's like, you know, this just doesn't feel sustainable.
Wow. I wonder why it's been secret as well. Like I wonder why it's interesting, isn't it? Like, sorry, just digress, but yes.
Yeah, and I don't even know whether it's secret or whether it becomes available at certain times in the cycle when our consciousness is ready for it. Yeah.
Wow.
That's how it was presented to me back in Egypt. It's like we know when we're in a certain part of the cycle because some of these higher frequency substances become available again. And I believe the alchemical gold, or the sacred gold, is definitely one of those. And
shiver in my heart.
the reason for that is, so we actually produce these nanoparticles of gold within our biological system.
Okay.
Mainly in our cerebral spinal fluid and through our sexual fluids, actually our sexual organs. But if we don't know how to...
Kundalini. Is it the Kundalini?
Yeah, if we don't know how to work with sunlight and process those energies, we can't really convert it into those nanoparticles of gold. And if we're subject to...
I would explain all of that, because that's like massive. So explain. So we go back.
Yeah.
So this golden, how do we produce that naturally, and how? So we just go back a bit on that.
Yeah. So purification is a massive component.
Okay.
Okay. Frequency and energy is a massive component. Yeah. And again, that's why they become more available during certain times of the cycle. Mm-hmm. And other times of the cycle, it's almost impossible for our bodies to produce those. So our body's the most advanced technology in the universe.
Oh, 100%.
Bar none.
Yeah.
So it can do anything.
Yeah.
It can transform into anything. It can make anything.
It can heal anything.
It can heal anything.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of that depends on the frequency, the collective frequency that we're in. So it's like, you know, my body can't just turn into a spaceship right now and travel intergalactically.
Wow.
However, it absolutely can in another realm, and so can your body, and so can everybody. And we actually are holographic fractal expressions of the entire universe. Yep. So you could take one of your DNA to another universe and replicate this entire universe. Everything in this universe is holographically represented in every aspect of you.
Yeah, and that's massive. But there was also something else massive that you said before that was around the frequency element, and the frequency of, you know, like when you are with someone else.
Yes.
It's not about, you are the healer, right? But it's the element of being in that frequency of somebody else, like people that are holding them spaces. Like, as you said, like you need the other elements, the togetherness, the oneness.
Yes.
This is the whole, like the love rising. This is what we're coming into, as you're saying. We need that togetherness to create that.
Yes.
Not the separation, not any of this stuff, right? So it's massive, because we're fed this, do it by yourself, and it's so amazing, do it by yourself, solo entrepreneur, and all of this stuff, where it's actually, that's the opposite to what we need to, as you said, collectively go into another dimension, field, energy. But I love it, because even as you're saying it, it's like it's not even the healer that's healing you, it's the frequency you're creating with that person
Yes.
and that energy. But if you get more people collectively doing that,
Yeah, and that's the time we're in.
that is the time we're in.
So people have done this in the past and it's been very solo.
Yes.
But now there's literally millions of people doing it.
Which is beautiful.
It's just beautiful, yeah. And it's, again, because it's more accessible, and as millions of people are doing that, then we're feeding that back to the field, and it makes it more accessible for others to do as well.
And then the golden element of all this, like entwining with it. So also then you've come across this substance and now it's being available because we are ascending.
Yes.
And then the people that want to be part of that will find it. But you're kind of like a vehicle to that.
Kind of, yeah. It's
So like the golden path almost.
like a steward to that, yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of, and it's as I said, our body can do this naturally. It doesn't need a substance or a supplement to do that. What the gold does as a supplement, though, is it's retraining the body on how to process and utilize those nanoparticles of gold. So those sexual organs and the cerebral spinal fluid that can actually utilize sunlight to produce those nanoparticles of gold.
I would never even know that that's in your sexual organs and the sunlight element. Like, so explain that. Like, how do you even know about this?
Yes, again,
it's just blowing my mind a little bit.
Yeah, it's passed down through the mystery schools and through like the Rosicrucians or the Knights Templar. I actually have friends here on the earth now that are living off light. So they have gone through these processes and they are self-sustainable. They can produce nanoparticles of gold with their sexual fluids, and they that's what they use their sexual fluids for. So they're not, they're celibate.
Okay, so this is how, right, so to get this gold substance, they have to be celibate?
I wouldn't say they have to be celibate. They're in a very high, let's say, frequency where they've actually activated their light bodies.
Yep.
And so the cultivation and sustainability of activating those light bodies is the light body is living off light.
Yep.
And one of the best supreme nutrients that holds that light is those nanoparticles of gold. So they can actually use sunlight to produce nanoparticles of gold that then sustains their body. Like once our body has a certain quotient of light within it, again, it's that advanced technology.
Yep.
So the body is clever enough to recognize when it has enough light quotient, it actually starts transforming and doesn't require the external food anymore.
Yeah.
It can sustain itself from within. Like an example is the pineal gland will actually open up and flower like a rosebud, becoming a flower, and it will release. It's called amrita, which is like a honey.
Yep.
That contains these nanoparticles of gold and like an inner light that is enough to, like a couple of drops of amrita each day is enough for the body to sustain itself.
And you do that from, how do you get there? So it's, okay.
Yes, so like 98% of that journey is purification.
So you become more purified.
Yes.
And then the more purified you get to, because this is where they stay, don't they? The masters are celibate, which I thought I'd never want to get to that stage. But there's an element of, it's really interesting because they also say like the alien race is here and they don't need food. So it's interesting.
Yeah, it's the higher frequencies is light. So light.
Yeah, because light is obviously it's how you grow a plant through light and water.
Yes.
So when did we need food and so much food?
Yes.
And is that a cause to a lot of illness?
Yes.
And so it's quite remarkable, really.
We're in a light body, like an alien light body, there is no illness. There's no death at that point. So
because we're a soul, aren't we?
Say again?
Our soul is eternal.
Yeah.
So we are light. That's what we are.
Yes.
And I say that because when I was younger, I had experiences where I saw that, right? So there's an element of, that makes complete sense.
So that's the opportunity for the period that we're in now, is to activate that light body, go through that process of purification, which again is there's like a death and resurrection process to that. So
Yes.
So one of the things with taking the gold, and once those frequencies lodge into the amygdala, we've got 26,000 nerve endings which plug directly into our subconscious. And so, we've got to work through those energies in there, which can be very confronting and very overwhelming, because it's subconscious. So we don't necessarily know what's in there. And a lot of it can be in the dream state as well. So our dreams can turn super vivid.
Wow.
And it can almost be like being awake becomes the resting time. Whereas when we're dreaming and in that dream state, it can be so intense with the processing, and it's like you're actually there experiencing it, right? Because
Yeah, I had that
you
recently.
are, you know.
But yeah, really, yeah. And that makes complete sense, because it was definitely past, generational trauma in my dream
Yeah,
that came up to be healed.
yeah,
But it's amazing, because what you're talking of, like, I've been through these journeys myself without the substance. So it's just amazing to hear of something that can obviously help and facilitate that as well.
yes. And the substance is just a grand catalyst for it.
Yeah.
So again, it's another way of purifying, but you don't need it.
No, of course, you don't need anything, really.
No, you don't need anything. Yeah.
But it's lovely that you have these options.
Yeah.
If people need that or want that, or,
it's supportive.
yeah, that nurturing element.
And it can help us speed the process up, or it's complementary, if you like.
I love it. And I love the energy and the good intention behind everything. So, like, if you could leave this, like, whoever's listening to this with one message, what would it be?
Yeah, it's a really great question. It's take the time to discover who you are. Yeah. And I don't mean who the person is, but take the time to discover the truth of who you are and who we are and what's happening here, because it's the greatest discovery I've ever found, and I believe it's the greatest discovery anybody can ever find, to remember the depth and the magic and the beauty of what life is and what we are.
It's amazing. How beautiful.
Let me ask you the question.
Me?
Yeah.
What would I like to leave everyone? Well, yeah, as I come to the end of this, I'm blown away, by the way. This is just magnificent, because I love all this. I love the science. But yeah, the main thing I get is that we are golden, that we are light, that we are. And yet we need to remember that, and that there is beauty all around us, and we're creating that all the time. And when we're in them states, and when we're remembering them states, how beautiful. It's just getting everyone back there, and just sometimes we forget that. But look after yourself, look after your health, make sure that you are recrystallizing, putting the minerals back in, and you're taking care of yourself, and you're not just running towards disconnect. Slow down and reconnect to the light that you are. That's the main thing I get from that. Beautiful.
Yeah, thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
I love the mission that you're on and the journey that you're on. I can just feel your love and your passion.
Yeah.
It's like that real Magdalene energy.
I love it. I love this. Even my mission is just this. It's even creating this and this energy, and being with someone that's on this frequency wise, what I get, and being in that, I'm there's no better place to be.
Yeah.
But to share that with others.
Yes.
So they know, we can all have that, right?
Yes.
Now.
Yes.
And that's it. That's all there is. It's that simple, and it's so nice, and it's so beautiful.
I've got to get a copy of your book too.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I know. I need to print some.
How do I get it?
I'm meant to be doing this, right? I'm meant to be got my book. I'm meant to be meeting people, printing them out.
How can I get one?
Yeah, amazing. I'll get you one.
Awesome.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I love it. Yeah.